Okay, have a good session, guys.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're live. Can everyone hear and see me? Can you guys sound off in the chat if you can hear and see me and our lovely hosts? Perfect. All right. Must be a little bit of a delay on the chat. Welcome back. Hope everyone had a good lunch or some time in the lounge to do some networking. Hope everyone got some water as well. Super important on a long day like this when we're staring at our computer screens. Really, really exciting 1 p.m. session for you all today with Mary Jane and Angel. Really excited to hop into it. But first, a few housekeeping things. As you know, all of these sessions will be recorded and available at the end of the day. You'll also all receive a certificate of attendance for the entire TMF Week conference, so toward the end of the week, not for each session. We've got a Q&A at the end of the session with our lovely speakers, and then that will be followed up again by some networking time in the lounge. You can check out our booth, explore the platform a little bit. I've been in awe of how cool it is and how far we've come in terms of virtual conferencing in a post-COVID world, if you will. So yeah, like I said, the session is going to last for 30 minutes. We'll have 15 minutes for a Q&A. I'll quickly hop back on and introduce the next session, and then again, networking time in the lounges, which if you haven't checked out already, definitely recommend you checking them out. They're super, super cool. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Jane and Angel, who will be taking us through an Extreme Makeover TMF Edition. So I'll let them hop into that now.
Great, and thank you so much, Emmett, for that introduction. So welcome to Extreme Makeover, the Trial Master File Edition, where we're going to be quickly going through building eTMF transfers and what the process involves.
I just wanted to let you know, if you're sharing your screen, we don't see it right now. Excellent.
So can everybody see the presentation now? Just one person. Okay. Thanks, Kimberly. Okay. So next slide, Mary Jane. So before we started, we just want to give you just a brief disclaimer. The opinions that are represented in this presentation are those of Mary Jane and myself. They don't represent those of Montrium or Mary Jane and my current or past employers. And also you should consider that your organizations may have additional requirements that aren't covered in this presentation. So certainly this is meant as a guidance for you and not something that is the end all of the process. So our usage of images and logos throughout this presentation is by use of educational fair usage under the copyright laws. And I wanted to just introduce myself as somebody that's been in the pharmaceutical and biotech records world for 15 years, some of which has been spent leading programs, creating them, and also creating archival and other programs as well. And Mary Jane, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Jane Cologne. I serve as the TMF archivist in Global Records at Beijing, USA. Before that, I worked at LMK, Clinical Research Consulting, and worked in TMF, working with other sponsors with their TMF work. I also, previous to that, worked at Sanofi Pasteur and worked as a clinical documentation coordinator and archivist for Sanofi Pasteur in Swiftwater, Pennsylvania.
Right. Next slide. Yes, so when considering the eTMF transfer, we're going to be breaking things out into roles. So that, of course, you're going to want to start with a homeowner or an architect, and for us, that's going to be the sponsor role. And then also there will be a contractor that has to execute on what exactly you want to build for your program, your transfer process. So typically that's going to be a CRO, but it could also be a sponsor in cases of mergers and acquisitions if you're spinning off a product to another sponsor. And also there is going to be the role of the person who's providing oversight for the eTMF transfer. And for us, that's the TMF archivist, who is kind of like a property manager. And they sometimes will have their role connect to IT, enterprise architecture, and so forth. And the ultimate goal is to create a home for your eTMF, something that takes into account classifications, scalability of the size, provides testing environments, and can ultimately be a place where your eTMF can reside for the life of your study. Next slide.
Well, why do transfers matter? First off, compliance with regulations, of course, 21 CFR Part 11 and 536/2014. We also have EMA guideline on computerized systems and eData in clinical trials. Data integrity incidents. We definitely want to minimize the risk of loss of any TMF records. And the TMF tells a story of how the study was conducted. We all know that. Inspection readiness, very important. Why transfers matter. We want to have all of the TMF record in our possession. Here are some figures here, footnotes with reference to how important data integrity is. These show of global drug manufacturing warning letters and how it's been increasing year to year. So we realize now that data integrity is very important, so we need to keep our focus on data integrity.
Yes, and you can see that data integrity is growing in relevance over time. It's gaining exposure across different health authorities. More and more of them are focusing on that, and certainly with eTMF transfers, that's an area that has come up in inspections and will continue to do so. So we do have some polling questions. If we can start with the first one.
Is a validated system optional for storing TMF records? True or false?
Okay, so we're starting to get some answers in. It's a little bit slow to push out. If you can just give us whether this is true or false.
Sorry, if everyone can direct their attention to the right panel, you'll see that there is a section that says polls. That's where you would answer all of your questions over there. So just feel free to get in those answers. And we're going to give you some time to answer because there is a little bit of a delay of 15 to 20 seconds. So get your answers in as soon as possible so that we can see if you're right or wrong.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
So it looks like we're getting a lot of answers in at this point. I think I'll end the poll. And it looks like I can show the results here.
So it looks like that for the question number 1, true got 13% and false got 86%.
Right. So definitely, I think everybody here is on the right track. That we need to have a validated system, not just a GXP system, but one that does what it says it's going to do. As far as GXP goes, next poll.
Are sponsors and CROs required to maintain audit trails? True or false?
So the poll is now being run. Just go in and give in your answers. Remember, it's on the right side. I'm going to give you 10 seconds.
Just 5 seconds more.
I don't know if everyone is getting in their answers. Hold on a second.
It's question 2, and it reads, must sponsors and CROs use audit trails?
Yeah, now it looks like people are answering.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for participating in that.
Okay, and I think we can end it now. We gave people some time to answer.
Okay. So we've got some people changed their answers, so now
It's all 100%.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
So you changed it to the required answer, and of course this is one of the key aspects of having a GXP system is that you do have audit trails where you can tell if documents have been altered or deleted. So great work there. And moving on to the third poll.
Do TMF transfers require inventory lists? True or false?
Okay, we're just letting that go, and that will be probably another 20 seconds to get to everyone here. Some of you looks like you have fast Wi-Fi, so you've got it earlier. And we'll let this run for another, let's call it 10 seconds. Okay, it looks like we got all the answers. So we'll end the poll here. And again, great job. We're going to have to come up with some harder questions.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so TMF transfers definitely require document inventory lists, and you would need to determine what goes into those lists. So obviously you're going to need unique identifiers. You're going to need certain metadata. In general, Mary Jane and I ask for all the metadata that we can get. But then we have some key essential metadata as well that the CRO contractor may need to go outside of their current reports to be able to add additional metadata. So you'll have to work with them. So the final true false.
Okay, is it necessary to document your transfers? In other words, is it necessary to record and document the transfer process? True or false?
So we'll give this maybe another 20 seconds. I'm not seeing the poll on the side. Oh, now it's moving. Okay, so now it looks like people have gotten that.
Mhm.
And just a
So
hint on.
it's looking
Yep.
like we had some answers coming in, and it looks like 100% of the respondents are agreeing that it's true.
That's awesome, Amit. And actually, that goes to the EMA guideline in the prior poll. It's something that the regulators are emphasizing, that you do need to not just say that you've performed the transfer and run data integrity checks, but you need to document what you've done. So great job. And seems Mary Jane and I have to do some work and make these questions a little more difficult. Next slide. So when it comes to the eTMF transfer process, one of the key elements that you're going to be leveraging for the documentation is the eTMF transfer plan, which talks about the why and the how of the eTMF transfers that are going from the source, the CRO contractor, to the target, which will be the sponsor, homeowner, or architect, perhaps. And running through some of the elements that you could include in your eTMF transfer plan would be a discussion of eTMF transfer kickoff meetings, the overall process of getting the eTMF via some secure platform into a temporary or long-term repository to hold the data, the actual data, the TMF content, and then the descriptions of that data as far as the document volume, the size that it's going to take up. We had already mentioned audit trails, which are a key part of the GXP repositories, and then also the classification, so the filing structure for your data. Of course, metadata is going to be key, and the filing structure, metadata, those types of things can be put in the document inventory list. And then finally, there might be testing. So if you're going to be doing some dry runs before you're actually bringing over your eTMF into a production environment or the equivalent in a temporary repository, you can include that in your eTMF transfer plan as well. And then finally, there are some things in here that you might be needing to do pre-migration. So if there's any data cleansing activities or functional QC that the study teams need to go through. And then finally, for the TMF archivist property manager, they have to be able to let the contractors know, hey, this transfer meets our expectations, everything is good to go. So you need some kind of acceptance criteria. So there's the migration memos, eTMF transfer plans, and then ultimately an acknowledgement of receipt, or AOR. And as it was
all in the plan.
All in the plan. And I know that there's some guidelines out there, and MHRA has one where they specifically are calling out the key thing. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. And that's a key mantra that I'm sure you've heard in the Motrium TMF week earlier, and you're going to hear it later, and you've heard it in years past, and you'll hear it in the future. It's key. Next slide. Mary Jane.
Okay, archivist property manager, that's me. I'm going to define transfer requirements and processes and ensure that the transfer is via a validated system. It's very important that when you're planning an eTMF transfer, that the system that the documents are going into is a validated system. The archivist is going to verify record count and also data integrity, review checksums, report deviations, survey the metadata that was transferred, confirms the document inventory. Again, as before, there was a question about document inventory. It's important that you have document inventory to know what exactly is being transferred. Confirms filing structure, ensures inclusion of audit trails, very important. Regulatory agencies look for that. Performs data integrity sampling, ensures acceptance criteria is satisfied. Whatever your employer or whatever it is that your company requests to be completed needs to be in that criteria spelled out so that they can get an acknowledgement of receipt stating that the transfer was successful. We confirm the acceptable eTMF transfer and then provide the CRO contractor with an acknowledgement of receipt. This is an overview of the different tasks and responsibilities that each individual has during an eTMF transfer. When you read these, you realize that it's pretty much everybody is working together to get this TMF transfer done right and without a hitch. So if we go to sponsor, homeowner, architect, the sponsor is reviewing and approving with their CRO contractor the eTMF transfer plan to identify the how, what, and where records will be transferred. And the sponsor will establish the scope of the records to be transferred by the CRO contractor and confirms the method of transfer, which is via SFTP, to ensure data integrity and security during the transfer. QC checks on content, audit trails, and metadata, and maintains evidence of chain of custody throughout the transfer process. Very important to have chain of custody throughout the transfer process. Documents the transfer process for regulatory compliance.
Great. Yeah, next slide, Mary Jane. And so you know, because you've answered this almost 100%, was that the SFTP transfer process needs to be validated to make sure that it's doing what it says it's going to be doing as far as being a GXP a transfer process and system. So with the CRO contractor, they're going to be having to review the transfer plan. So it's not just that the sponsor, homeowner, and the TMF archivist as the property manager are dictating something. It has to be something that the CRO can do. So there needs to be a joining of all of the people involved in building this eTMF transfer so that it's something that is achievable. And there are going to be data integrity checks involved, but what are those? Are those going to be through systems? Are they going to be manual checks? All this needs to be agreed to in the eTMF transfer plan. And then we had already mentioned about the document inventories, And certainly there are other things to record about the eTMF transfer. All of this needs to be agreed to prior to the eTMF transfer taking place. And there has to be some way to document any data integrity incidents that happened and then show that they've been remediated. Next slide.
And here we see that the archivist property manager prepares, approves, and files the eTMF transfer plan. And when we say files, the eTMF transfer plan, we mean files in the TMF as evidence that there was a TMF transfer plan created and agreed upon. Ensures any deviations encountered during transfer process are resolved by the CRO contractor. Again, compares checksums, performs review of data integrity on sampling of documents, and documents the results of data migration. Confirms all acceptance criteria are met successfully. If there is anything that is not what you expect to receive from the CRO contractor, you may request that the CRO contractor retransfer the eTMF. Also provides the CRO contractor, once everything is A-OK, an acknowledgement of receipt.
Thanks, Mary Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And we had mentioned before that you can't just say, this is the eTMF transfer plan in a silo. You need to communicate with your CRO contractor, your TMF archivist, property manager, and the sponsor, so the study team. And ultimately, this means that you need to get buy-in from your senior management about this eTMF transfer, because some of these process elements will require funding, especially if you're changing from a prior process. So that's why we put this up at the beginning to get the buy-in. Some of the things that you may need to be buying would be a GXP repository. There are a lot of them out there. Just because there's a system out there that says that it's a GXP repository doesn't mean that it actually is. You need to run through the validation to make sure that it's touching on all the aspects that you need. And that means that you're going to have to run through your GXP transfer process, whether it's a vault-to-vault transfer over a secure file transfer platform, however it is, you need to run through that and validate that it works. And ultimately, the GXP requirements are going to be that it's auditable and it's clear that there's an audit trail connected with the various aspects. When you're doing your data integrity checks, you should be looking at system verifications, or automatic, or maybe manual sampling of documents to see if they open correctly, if there are no issues with their file names, and so forth. And ideally, there should be checksums. So we mentioned health authorities before. So they are always referencing some kind of MD5 hashes that you can use to ensure that the documents that were sent were the ones that you received. So there are other aspects to this as well. So classification, you've got to have some classification file structure. So likely to be the CROs. Before you put it into your repository, you'll look to see, are you going to keep the CRO contractors TMF index? Do you need to do a crosswalk to your currently used TMF index, or are you going to keep that as an archive study in the prior TMF index state? And then again, document what happened. And as Mary Jane had said, you need to file all this documentation into your TMF, and it should be in section 111. Next slide. So here are just keying in on some of the data integrity aspects from that earlier slide where we're showing that there were more data integrity incidents over time. Those aren't coming to major findings, but they do tend to occur around inspections where there are findings. So the fewer data integrity incidents you have, the better overall for your inspection readiness. Next slide. And then here's a comparison of how the data integrity principles connect into fair data principles, an overall quality TMF that is able to tell the story of the clinical study, and then also privacy principles and record keeping principles. So definitely the middle line where we're talking about integrity for record keeping and Alcoa Plus are areas that you're going to focus on for the transfers. So you might be looking at file truncation as an issue, or are you able to open all the files, or are some of them in the wrong format, a compressed file that you can't render in your system, or are they things that are obsolete softwares that are no longer supported? So all those things you keep in mind when you're creating your either manual or automated or a combination of those data integrity checks. Next slide.
Now we're going to see how these get answered. Polling questions. We have multiple choice here. Ensuring data integrity is crucial. 1, A, before transfer. 2, B, during transfer. 3, C, after transfer. Or 4, D, all of the above.
Looks like everyone has come to a consensus once again.
Oliver, Amit, Mary Jane, we need harder questions here. So
Yeah.
okay, so almost 100% got all of the above. So definitely we're talking about the eTMF for its full life cycle. So not just before, but also during and until its ultimate archival and disposition at the end of its life cycle. So great job again, Mary Jane.
How would you remediate data integrity incidents? A, add a note to file to TMF 010101. B, update the documents. C, request retransfer. Or D, all of the above.
Okay, so we're getting a mix.
This seems to be the one getting everyone. We've got a few answers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We'll give everybody another 10 seconds here. Okay, so this one is a little more difficult. Although that's a low bar so far, right?
Keep in mind that we're looking for the best answer to the question.
That's a good hint. Okay, so we're coming up another 5 seconds. Okay, we'll end it there. So, Mary Jane, what do you think? I think you know what my answer would be.
Well, my answer would be C, to request a retransfer.
And of course, you can make the argument that if the severity of the data integrity incident is not that great, that it's possible that a different answer could be made. But again, if you're seeing a lot of issues with the data, you might be best off requesting a retransfer. And again, this is like a cost element, so you need your senior management buy-in. You need to get that early buy-in from the CRO contractor, from your study teams, and make sure that everybody understands that data integrity incidents may lead to a re-export. So great job. Next slide. I think we're going to have to come up with more questions like that last one.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Here, good communication among stakeholders is a key element for successful eTMF transfers. We know that when people are discussing something as complicated and as involved as an eTMF transfer, you want to make sure that everybody is communicating so that everyone knows what's expected. Identify the TMF content, audit trails, and metadata that encompass the scope of the transfer. Determine storage requirements and acceptable formats for target system. Discuss and formulate an eTMF transfer plan that documents requirements and steps necessary to execute your transfer without a hitch. And decide on method of transfer. Industry best practice for TMF transfer is via SFTP. Decide by reviewing TMF index if you need a crosswalk of original source metadata into target system. And determine where records will ultimately be archived for long-term preservation. Note, may need to transfer original source PDF renditions. So all of these things need to be discussed before an eTMF transfer should take place so that everyone understands what needs to be done during the transfer, before the transfer, during, and after the transfer is completed.
Yes, and here are some key takeaways, and then we'll go to some of the questions that you've posted. There are some really good ones there. Definitely you need to be looking at GXP validated systems, not just for the long-term repository, but also for any interim repositories where you're keeping the eTMF, as well as the transfer process. So if you're using some kind of SFTP, that should also be not just a GXP system, but a GXP validated system. You've got to document it. Determine how are you going to check the data integrity. So you can definitely do the Alcoa Plus, where you're opening it, seeing like, are these documents legible? Are they renderable? And are there any issues, let's say, with file truncation for the name? There were some questions on the chat about checksums. You can find information from EMA and MHRA about the specific checksums, but ultimately what a checksum is it's a unique identifier for the document that's created. If there's any alteration of that document, the checksum hashtag, the hash is going to change. So that is one way that you can verify that the documents are what you have expected to receive. And it's a trigger if the hashes change, that you're going to need to do a re-export. So you might have a verification through your SFTP that will signal that there's an issue with the data. It's probably looking at those checksums. So also get sponsor buy-in for the eTMF transfer process. So a lot of these repositories are and processes are going to involve FTEs and new systems and checking with computer systems validations that the systems are operating as anticipated. All these are costs, and you'll need senior management buy-in. And then identify all the components of your transfer, the content, audit trails, metadata, and also documentation that the transfer happened according to a plan and that you've received everything that you need to, and then making sure that that's all filed in the appropriate TMF section. And finally, you might think about your long-term archiving in a system. So in some cases, some of the CRO contractors are providing you with TMF data that is coming from repositories that are not only GXP validated, but they also have the ability to store things for the long term. So that means that there might be additional components to transfer, such as PDF renditions. So keep in mind all the components that from the CRO contractor side that are coming over to the sponsor, homeowner, so that you can have a happy long-term storage place for your eTMF. And we can go to the next slide.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your attention to our session. Keep in mind that it takes multifunctional do-it-yourself crew for a smooth eTMF transfer process.
Yeah, and let's go to one of the high upvoted questions from an anonymous user. So when performing a TMF transfer at the end of the study, is it necessary to put the CRO TMF into the sponsor TMF? Or is it acceptable to keep in a temporary repository until it gets into the archival system? Mary Jane, did you want to take that?
Well, it depends on how the transfer is done, if it's vault to vault or if it's a separate repository, a temporary repository until it goes into Viva Vault. You want to make sure that you have everything documented, number one. Number two, that all of the checks, the data integrity checks are done. And all of the proof that the records that you anticipated to be transferred come over without any issues, especially after doing your checksums and other checks, QC checks of the documents.
And anonymous user also seems to have a lot of great questions. They also want to know, how do you assess oversight when building a TMF platform system? So I would say you need a multifunctional team of all the people that are using that TMF platform. Mary Jane, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, usually the individuals that are using the system most are the ones that are going to give you the best feedback. So I would definitely check with your TMF specialist, your study managers, your study startup people, everyone that's utilizing the system on a regular basis will give you the best feedback for what's best to use.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I want to be cognizant of time. I also wanted to thank Nikki Deacon for raising the checksum question. There's a lot of resources out there through EMA and MHRA, and also other places as well regarding checksum templates. But Amit, I think we're about out of time.
Yeah, I'll hop in here really quickly, and Mary Jane, maybe you can just stop sharing your screen so I can pop back in here
Sure.
real
Thank
quick. We will have a 15-minute networking break right now, and I invite you two, Mary Jane and Angel, to head to the lounges and maybe answer some of the other questions that were
Sure.
raised by the attendees here, because there are a lot of great ones there. And then obviously everyone in attendance, inviting you to also head on over to the lounges. When we do get back, we're going to have a great session from Bobby Wells. It's going to be on putting the control back in QC, which we're super excited about. And then obviously head to the lounges right now for your networking, meet people, connect with them on LinkedIn, ask Mary Jane and Angel some more of those questions that were in the Q&A. And of course, fill out our survey for your opportunity to win a sweet, sweet pair of iHeart TMF Converse. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. We'll see you
Thanks for
later.
your time.
Bye-bye.